Good evening and a warm welcome to Personal Finance. I'm Kukuletu Cele. The internet can be a dangerous place for the unwary, and more so over the holiday season, with many falling victim to some form of cybercrime. Bernard Hotz, head of business crime and forensic team at Werksmans Attorneys, joins me now for a look at how to be safe on the net. Good to have you with us this evening, Bernard.
Thank you, Gugu.
Maybe before we get into the impact that it might have on consumers' pockets when it comes to cybercrime, let's get the broader picture here. How prevalent and what are the trends regarding cybercrime in South Africa?
Gugu, unfortunately, what's happening is it's getting more and more prevalent. And without wanting to be alarmist, what I'd like to do is just draw attention to the latest form of attack, which is being launched against individuals. What we normally see from, if we call it phishing, I call it a shotgun approach, where spam emails are sent to a whole host of people to try and entice people to click onto it. That's called phishing.
Yes, that's the confirm that this is your email, or
correct,
log on to this to get into your particular bank account.
SARS wants to refund you,
There
something like that.
Okay.
What unfortunately we're seeing is that the cyber criminals have realized that, let's call them your top ranking executives, aren't falling for these types of scams. So what they're doing now is, as opposed to targeting a whole host of individuals in one shot, they are profiling a specific person. It's called social media engineering. So you, for instance, could have your profiles, your interests, whatever, on the various social platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and hypothetically, you could be expressing your views on certain issues. You could be aligning yourself with certain non-profit organizations that are close to your heart. And what these cyber criminals are doing is they're trawling these social media platforms, and they are profiling you. So they now understand you. They understand what interests you. They understand what's affecting you at that moment in time. And lo and behold, you may find yourself receiving a telephone call or a very direct email in which they portray themselves as belonging to some kind of organization which identifies with your specific interest, and asking to send you a proposal for you to look at, for you to align yourself with their organization, and they kind of gain your trust. And what we've seen happening is, whilst on the telephone, they could say, we're going to send you our email and have a look at it. Click on it, and yes, it's coming from us, and it comes from an ostensibly plausible organization. And in that moment, what's happening is you receive this email, you click on this PDF document, and that's then given the cyber criminals access to not only your personal data, but generally CEOs, CFOs have a very high level of authorization within their companies. And all of a sudden, the cyber criminals are now into the entire network. So I need to caution people out there that don't be taken in. Don't shoot in haste and repent at your leisure. Rather, if somebody contacts you and they give you a very plausible story, if it's somebody you don't know, an organization you haven't dealt with previously, be cautious. Rather check it out. If you've got IT, an IT department, most of these big organizations have IT departments. If you receive emails of this nature, rather send it to your IT department, let them scan it. Make sure that there's nothing untoward in it.
Bernard, you've mentioned quite a few measures to put in place here, and obviously the C-suite executive is someone who is at more high risk. But when it comes to this level of going to your IT department and getting your PA to double check that they don't just necessarily respond to any kind of news that comes through from a banker, so-called, isn't this an additional cost? Isn't this an additional frustration on the part of the South African consumers? Why can't the banks just make it easier for us by putting tighter and stricter measures in place?
Well, it's not only the banks. So is it an extra effort to go to? Yes, it is. But rather be proactive than reactive. So rather go to that extra measure and safeguard, because the problem is, if the cyber criminals get access to the entire corporate network, the harm that can be caused is absolutely diabolical. So I'd rather suggest that caution. I'd rather also suggest that IT departments are continuously upgrading their security measures, are continuously ensuring that they're making use of products that are out there. There are products out there. You can never, unfortunately, be 100% foolproof, but you should endeavor not to rest on your laurels, but always to ensure that you've got the updated technology available.
Let's go to the consumer angle and perspective of things here, because as you mentioned, people use their smartphones now, their mobile tablets, as well as internet banking as a particular service. And if the worst case scenario does happen where you get defrauded or become a victim of cybercrime, what recourse do I have as an individual against the perpetrators of that particular crime?
It's so difficult because the internet is a worldwide net. So very often the cyber criminals who are perpetrating these kind of crimes are not to be found within your local jurisdiction. You may find somebody sitting in Eastern Europe, which is precisely what we're seeing happening at the moment with something called ransomware, where the cyber criminals in Eastern Europe are taking companies' data ransom. And they're demanding that you pay the ransom, failing which you don't get your data. Now, the experts involved in this have confirmed to me that these are highly specialized cyber criminals who are using the most advanced technology, and they're not within our jurisdiction. So unfortunately, I know it's not what consumers want to hear, because unfortunately any one of us could be unwittingly a victim of this type of fraud. I guess what we have to do is be forever vigilant and not click on sites. When it comes to social media platforms, set your privacy settings appropriately. Unless you want the whole world to see who you are,
and what you had for breakfast,
set your privacy settings appropriately. We have to become proactive.
In that proactive behavior, does it call for a tighter relationship between yourself and the banks? In other words, double checking the calls or the emails that you might receive, as you alluded to?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's people get lured in, especially when you receive an email from the receiver of revenue, for instance, that says, you've got a refund. Please just click on here. Now, you know, too many people think, yay, money's coming my way. But it's the same thing about you've won the lotto when you've never bought a lotto ticket.
Exactly.
So rather than just acting impetuously, remember that your bank has told you they will never ask you to divulge your personal details, your PIN number, your banking account details, unless it's in a specific format. Remember that when you get an email from a bank or from SARS, got to question it before you just click on that button.
Something else that I've heard murmurings of in the market is when it comes to your mobile apps in particular, because a lot of the times the software that you have on your cell phone device, you update it or it gets changed, and that might pose a risk to those who might have access to the private information with regard to accessing a lot of your apps, and especially when it comes to banking apps. Is that something else that a lot of consumers don't take into consideration? Because often we download these things and just tick the T's and C's box without actually having read them.
Yes, I think most of us are guilty of it, and in fact, you know, all too often, I as an attorney, when you also click on that T&C box, unless it's a client saying to me, please will you read those T&Cs, or we too often just click that box without realizing what the implications are. So I guess what I'm saying to people is we need to be vigilant, we need to be cautious, and we need to be a little bit slower on the reply button.
Exactly. So read and don't reply to any and every email that you receive. Read through it more thoroughly.
Absolutely.
Bernard, I'll tell you what, let's take away some of the highlights from today's conversation for the viewers at home in order to be more vigilant when it comes to cybercrime. Bernard, if we can wrap things up maybe in 3 or 5 points for the consumer watching this evening, the considerations for them to take care of when it comes to protecting yourself against cybercrime.
I think the most important thing, Gugu, is that we must realize that the cyber criminals are intelligent people. They are forever evolving. So the traditional scams that we've seen happening are not the be-all and end-all. They are reinventing themselves in more complex, complicated scams. So be wary. If somebody is contacting you on an unsolicited basis. Don't volunteer information. Don't click on that button. Rather do research to make sure that you know who you are interacting with first.
Better safe than sorry, quite
Absolutely.
clearly. Such a pleasure having you with us this evening, Bernard. Thank you so much for your insights. It does make it quite clear and obvious that given the upcoming Easter holiday season that's coming up, South Africans need to be more careful when it comes to replying too quickly to those emails and sharing their personal information with people that they might not be sure of from a banking perspective. Well, that's where we leave it for this evening. Thank you once more to Bernard Hotz. He's the head of business crime and the forensics team at Werksmans Attorneys. Remember that we'd love to hear from you, and you can tweet any of your comments or suggestions to @CNBC Africa using the hashtag Finance410 or to myself @Kukumfupi on Twitter. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.